Mets and Knicks were in Game 5 when O.J. started that fateful drive. His four-way hazard lights were blinking, and no one knew what the Jews was thinking.
I've been to Reno, Chicago, Fargo, Minnesota, Buffalo, Toronto, Winslow, Sarasota, Wichita, Tulsa, Ottawa, Oklahoma, Tampa, Panama, Mattawa, La Paloma, Bangor, Baltimore, Salvador, Amarillo, Tocopilla, Barranquilla, and Padilla. I'm a killed. I've been everywhere, man. I've been everywhere, man. Crossed the desert bare, man. I breathe the mountain air, man. I've traveled, I've had my share, man. I've been everywhere.
This is Oversight Live, your advocate for good governance. We're putting the site back in. Oversight. Here's the watcher on the wall, your host, Ben Carpenter.
Hey, good evening, everyone. Welcome to Oversight Live. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for watching if you're catching the recording. What is Oversight Live? Well, we don't have any roads to our state capital, and our only path there is only way to get there is by air or by ferry. So it's cost prohibitive for most Alaskans to get to Juneau, and therefore it's hard for us to provide oversight of our government, especially our legislature during legislative session. So I spent 6 years in the legislature, in the House, and I have experience that I want to share with you. And so that's what we're going to do. We're going to bring you content that is relevant and timely and afford you the opportunity to ask questions. And I'll share what I can based on my experience, and I'll answer questions as best I can. All you got to do is text your question in the social media app, whether it's YouTube, Facebook, or X that you're watching on. If you're watching the recording, you've got a question, go ahead and shoot me an email, producer@oversightlive.com, and I'll do my best to answer that question too. Just pulling up my email here so that I make sure that if you send me one while I'm on, I can answer it. Okay, so we're going to attempt to have fun too. This is kind of a fun episode tonight. Was unable to bring you House Finance yesterday because the recording, and this is important because the budget amendments are going on in the House Finance for the operating budget right now, and the recording was not uploaded to the source site on KTOO in time for me to be able to bring it to you. But we've got it tonight, and I've fast forwarded and set the video at one of the key amendments, which is near and dear to a lot of our hearts, and that is the I guess I should back up and say, look, if you didn't know, there's no dividend in the permanent fund. There's no permanent fund dividend in the budget this year. Okay. Not yet anyway. Well, the way that it's going to get added is through this amendment process that they're going through right now. Not only right now is in the committee meetings that is going on today, but this entire process of adding amendments to the operating budget in House Finance. Then it goes to the floor, goes through another amendment process, goes to the Senate, goes to Senate Finance. They go through an amendment process, and then it goes to the Senate floor. So this is, kind of a first step to add a dividend back into the budget. And that is something that I believe is happening right now. It'll probably happen tonight, talking to some folks, but I don't know what it's going to look like. But anyway, I wanted to show you what happened yesterday because this is key, and there's some backstory here that you really need to know about. So I'm going to jump to the House Finance meeting from yesterday, and if we've got time, I'll jump over to the House Finance meeting that's going on right now and see if we can't get it watched a little bit and see maybe we can get it live where they add the PFD. Anyway, here's what happened yesterday.
Amendment 12, Representative Foster.
I move amendment number 12.
Check. We have a motion and an objection. Representative Foster.
Yes, thank you. We all know that inflation seems like it's out of control. The cost of everything has been skyrocketing. And by the way, this is the full PFD amendment. And we all feel inflation from food to healthcare to raising children, and now especially for energy, including gasoline, heating oil, electricity, utilities. And I just don't know how Alaskans, many Alaskan families, are going to get by. Alaskans need help, and what better way to provide that help than to give Alaskans their share of Alaska's resource wealth via the Permanent Fund Dividend. We have a law in the books that contains the formula for determining how much the PFD is. Right now, the formula that's in law states each Alaskan should receive this year, it's about $3,800. Some folks say that we can't afford it, and I have two things to say about that. First, I say that if folks don't like the law, then we need to change the law and change the formula that's in law. And if not, then as I mentioned earlier, we need to follow the law. Second, I say we can afford it. It just comes down to who we want to benefit. Do we want to benefit large out-of-state oil corporations that receive nearly $1 billion in state oil credits, tax credits, or do we want to benefit Alaskans? Each year, the legislature reduces the PFD more and more. And when that happens, my folks back home ask, why are we forcing low and middle income Alaskans to take a financial hit? And yet we don't ask anything of high income earners or oil companies. And I have to agree with them when they say it's not fair. I want to help Alaskans put food on the table, to pay for health care, to heat their homes and keep the lights on. So with that, I am offering amendment number 12, which is the full PFD amendment. Thank you.
Other comments? Representative Tomaszewski.
Thank you, Co-Chair, and thank you, Co-Chair Foster, for bringing this amendment. I will be in support of this amendment. I believe in a statutory permanent fund dividend will help all families across the state. I think it is fair and equitable to the people of Alaska. And I thank you for bringing this amendment, and I will be supporting this amendment for a full statutory PFD. Thank you.
Other comments? Representative Stack.
Thank you, Co-Chair. Co-Chair Foster, I have a couple of questions for you. Your amendment takes another big draw out of the earnings reserve account. Earlier in this process, you voted in favor of CS that just deposited all of the POMV draw that we used to pay dividend into the general fund. I'm curious if you entertain an amendment to change the fund source to the general fund as opposed to the earnings reserve account, because we've already deposited the draw from the dividend fund into the general fund. So it would seem like the appropriate thing would just be to appropriate money out of the general fund, because we've already taken that action in our earlier CS.
Representative Allard.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Representative Foster, for bringing this forward. I am too also in favor for a full statutory PFD. Thank you.
Others? Representative Galvin.
Thank you. I appreciate this, Co-Chair Foster. I appreciate your concern that we need to change the statute if we can't follow it. I also think that it would be irresponsible to follow the statute at this given time. This is a perfect time for me to say I am all in for everyone to get the full statutory PFD if we had other sources of broad-based revenue, which I do support, because I think that there are better ways to skin this cat. As you know, I've put forward a high earner tax and a head tax and other things that would distribute funds differently. And we're not there yet as a state. I appreciate that. And because we're not there, and this is, I think it is true that that lessening the PFD is inequitable, but it's the only right now lever that we have for delivering services, unfortunately. So with that in mind, the equation doesn't work out for me. I think we need to maintain as much as we can in savings and still make some targeted expenditures to protect folks like your constituents and mine who are vulnerable. I don't have as many, but there are some. And so I just wanted to say that I appreciate this amendment, and unfortunately, I cannot support it at this time.
Representative Jimmy.
Thank you, Co-Chair Josephson. I agree that we need to provide for our constituents the best we can. And how do we do that here in Alaska? How do we provide what I know I need to do is get a meaningful PFD and new revenue. But we can't drain our savings to do this. When I got elected, I think about 7 generations back, what my ancestors had to endure. I'm here today, and I'm thinking 7 generations ahead. I've said it once and I'll say it again. If we gave out a full permanent fund for the past 8 years, there would be no PFD right now. My grandkids won't get it. Your future generations won't get it. Tell that to your kids. Sorry. Tell my grandkids they're not going to get it. Tell your grandkids they're not going to get it. There'll be no PFD. Do we want to be smart spenders right now? We have to be. We have no choice but to be. Unless we're all willing to bring in new revenue to the state of Alaska, we need to stop fooling around with this full PFD. I believe I should get a full PFD, but I'm being realistic. I grew up poor with limited income. I know what it's like to fight for every dollar you get. So this is, stop playing around with this kind of politics. This is just for, you guys got to stop.
She almost said it.
Let's tax the high earners. Let's tax the oil companies. Let's bring in new revenue. Let's start bringing in serious money to Alaska if we all want to do a full PFD. Otherwise, let's kiss Alaska goodbye, broke. Thank you. Thank you.
Representative Bynum.
Thank you, Co-Chair Josephson, through the chair to the maker of the amendment. I'm just, as Representative Staff had indicated, it looks like the funding source is the ERA here. Currently, the budget language that we have has already a full 5% POMV draw into the general fund. And I'm just wanting to know what the intention of this amendment is. If this is an intention to pull an additional $2.4 billion from the ERA, or is this an intention to pull the amount necessary to cover a full dividend, including the POMV that's already been made? I'm just a little unclear on what we're trying to do. And the reason why I ask is because if this is an additional draw, that obviously leaves a gap in unexpended revenue from the general fund that will be available for spending. So that'd be helpful. Thank you.
Co-Chair Foster, in answer to the question, if you wish.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I'm glad Representative Staff, you flagged that, as well as Representative Bynum. It looks like there are some crossed wires here. It was my intent that this not be an additional draw on the ERA, but it was meant to be from the POMV originally pulled, which is the 5% POMV. So it would be within that. And if I could just make some additional comments, I thought Representative Staff, where you might have been going was maybe in some of your questions earlier had to do with, what the budget was going to look like and what cuts we might be looking at. And I'm actually supportive of seeing this as a type of a spending cap, because if we know that this is an amount that we're going to have to set aside, then it leaves a certain amount left over for government services. And I know for folks out there who don't want to see government spending increase, this is one way to do it. And so I just wanted to point that out. The other things that I might want to say, and maybe I'll make a conceptual amendment here in a moment, but is there are multiple ways to pay for it. As I mentioned, the oil industry and the tax credits that they receive, but also I mentioned earnings reserve, certainly open to, that. And then, it could be a combination. It doesn't have to be, the full amount. But if there was some interest in wanting to do a portion of that,
So
Also, if there was a three,
that's telegraphing right there that he has no intention to pay a full statutory dividend. Just pull it from a portion of somewhere else, and we'll make stuff up because the amendment I brought forward doesn't work as it is. I'm sorry I brought it forward, but now we got to deal with it. So to answer your question, let's see, Rick, you were asking who is that guy, and I think you're talking about this gentleman right here. This representative is Neil Foster. He represents the northern interior of the state, and he's from Nome. He has been he has suffered a number of elections, really close elections, because he has cut the dividend, and he's very vulnerable if he cuts the dividend. So here's what's happening. Okay. The majority has no intention. And again, Co-Chair Foster is one of the 3 co-chairs of finance. Okay. So they're in control of the budget. They have no intention of paying a full statutory dividend. This is all a dog and pony show. It's all 100% telegraphing what they want people to see them fighting for. But as we just heard, they've got an amendment that's broken. And they can't make it work because there's not enough people that are going to agree to draw an additional sum from the earnings reserve account to pay for a statutory dividend after already drawing the POMV from the earnings reserve account and putting it in the general fund. Okay. So, and I'm not going to get too down in the weeds here. I could explain why the technicalities of this, but I'm not going to because I want to make a different point here. What's happening right now is they're telegraphing that they want to pay a dividend, but they need to raise taxes. And let's just think about this for a second. Nobody's talking really about cutting spending at all. Okay. So it's just, we got to find more revenue. If the Democrats really wanted to find more revenue instead of taking the dividend, if they really wanted to go back to their constituents and say, hey, we've created a new tax, they would vote for a full statutory PFD and they would die on that hill because it would force the conversation to either cut the budget, which there's not even enough Republican support to cut the budget, or you're going to raise taxes somewhere else. If they really wanted to force the conversation about raising revenue, raising taxes somewhere else, they'd support a full dividend because it would force people to have to deal with the spending problem that we have. And you're only going to deal with it one of 2 ways. You're going to reduce the budget or you're going to raise taxes on somebody else. You're just not going to take the dividend. If these people really, really thought that the dividend needed to stay. And what we just heard Co-Chair Foster say is the dividend per the statute is $3,800 per person in a family. So all of the price increases that we have with the fuel right now and where it will be at the end of this year, a family of 4 is going to get 4 $3,800 checks. Now, that might not mean anything to a family that's making $100,000 a year or $200,000 a year. But a family that's struggling at $70,000 a year, what happens today if they give a in-house finance right now, if they don't give a statutory dividend, but they give $1,000 dividend like they've done before, okay? We'll subtract 1,000 from the statutory requirement, which is $3,800. Okay, you do the math. Take 1,000 away from 38. Every person in the family that would be eligible for a dividend is going to pay $2,800 in taxes. If you had a broad-based tax of some sort, you're not going to pay $2,800 in taxes. Times 4 people in the family. Your kids are not going to pay taxes at all. When I did this figuring, a 2% broad-based tax, broad-based sales tax would cost family of 4 somewhere around $900 a year. The whole family, $900 a year. Okay? So you can say yes to a tax and pay $900, or you can say no to a tax and pay $2,800 because you're going to lose your dividend. Like this is complete ignorance on the part of people in the legislature and people in the general public. They just don't understand the scale of the problem. Here's what the big problem is. Okay. We have got people unwilling in this state. We've got people with means who are unwilling. I'm talking about wealthy people who are tied to state spending. They are unwilling to help reduce spending, and they're unwilling to say yes to a tax. So they want to see spending continue and even increase, and they're unwilling to pay for it. Make somebody else pay for it. Make the dividend pay for it. Make the permanent fund earnings pay for it. That's the problem we have. Why do we continue to see government spending increasing? Why do we keep having more and more state employees hired? It's because nobody has to say no to a tax, and they don't have to say no to or say yes to cutting. They just keep taking the dividend, and it's going to be gone. And who pays for that? It's not the people with means. It's not the rich people. It's not the people with $100,000 and $200,000 jobs. Okay? It's the people who are struggling in the state. And both of the political parties are silent on this. Republicans put out priorities earlier this year for the legislature. Republicans didn't even touch the PFD. They didn't even provide a recommendation. They just said, we want a sustainable budget. Okay, well, I guess you can sustain it by taking the dividend. Didn't say anything about we want to see a reduction in spending. Democrat Party's not going to ask for a reduction in spending. They want more spending. They want more taxation. We're not we're not solving the problem. I've attempted to reframe this argument, because it is clear to me that if the Democrats really wanted to have an income tax or a sales tax or some oil tax, if they wanted to see the tax part of the solution, if they wanted to see it, then they would be saying yes to a dividend. Because then it would force everybody to bend over backwards to either cut the budget or raise taxes. Here's what's for better or worse, the Constitution sets it up so that all the political power in this state resides in the people. The natural resources in this state are all owned by the people. That's an anomaly, because in every other jurisdiction, state, country, the people don't own the natural resources unless they own the land. And then sometimes you don't own the natural resources too, like, the water rights or mineral rights or whatever. But many times, and I would say most times throughout the United States, if you own the land, you own the mineral rights for it. You own the natural resources found on that land. In Alaska, you don't. It is collectively owned by the state, by the people, we the people. Okay? So we've got a problem in this state that is saying, we're going to take an equal distribution of earnings from that natural resources. What we've set aside money, we've invested in the permanent fund. There's dividends coming from that investment. A portion of that investment is paying for state government, and a portion of it is paying for dividends or returning dividends to the people, to the resource owner. And the legislature is stepping in and saying, time out. We're going to take those dividends so that we don't have to raise taxes and so we don't have to cut spending. So what was a fair distribution of investment earnings, dividends, what's a fair distribution across the board for all Alaskans, for all resource owners, turns into an unfair distribution because now your elected leaders in the legislature are responsible for divvying out the earnings from the permanent fund. And they do it through grants and through paychecks to state workers. They do it through special funding for special interests. And now it's not fair. It's not a fair distribution of earnings from our resource wealth. You can become a resource owner in the state of Alaska. You know what you have to do in the state of Texas to become a resource owner? You got to buy land that has resources on it. In Alaska, you just got to become a resident, pay your time, pay your dues, be here for a year, and then you qualify to become a resource owner. And you get a portion of the resources of this state. You have a vested interest in seeing those resources developed because you have a personal stake in it. And if you want to see government, you want to see more government services, then pay for it. Ask your representative to create a tax so that you can pay a portion of your resource wealth or your income, however you want to pay it, to the state. But if you don't want to have more services and you don't want to see a larger budget, then ask your representative to help reduce spending so that you don't have to have a tax. This is a healthy state, and this is a healthy conversation that we should be having in the legislature every year. We are avoiding that entire conversation because of amendments like this and a fickle legislature that will not address the problem. All resource owners are equal in the state of Alaska, but some just get more equal budget handouts than others. That's the direction we're headed if we allow this PFD to go away. It becomes elect me because we've got control of the PFD, we've got control of the permanent fund earnings, and as it grows a couple $100 million every year, we get to hand that out. And those that benefit, they benefit well. But those that aren't at the government trough, they don't get to benefit. So the resource ownership in the state becomes a function of what the legislature hands out to people. We all benefit from roads. We all benefit from airports. We all benefit from schools, right? Those are all things that we can collectively argue that we benefit from. There's a portion of our permanent fund earnings that is already paying for that, for government through the permanent fund. We have set up a process in the state of Alaska that says a portion of our permanent fund earnings and our ownership of the state, right? We're resource owners and we're also the owners of the government. This government is not an entity that gave us rights. We have rights. We created a government to serve us. We set up a legislature. That legislature set up laws that said part of the permanent fund earnings is going to pay for government and part of it is going to return a dividend to the resource owner, the people. In lieu of paying that resource dividend, we're going to grow government with it. And we're avoiding the conversation about who should pay for government. We're just saying, well, everybody's going to pay with their dividend. But that disproportionately hurts people at the lower end of the income spectrum because it's a higher percentage of their take-home pay. So those people out in Neil Foster's district, out in Nome, they don't have high incomes out there unless they work for the Native Corporation or the state or the Fed. If they're not a government employee, they don't have high incomes out there. $3,800 per person in a family, that's significant. That is significant. We're going to catch the rest of this, see what happened.
3/4 support within the legislature, certainly willing to go the CBR route. So with that, Mr. Co-Chair, I would entertain, I would offer a motion to change the funding source on this from permanent fund ERA to general fund.
Okay, so there's an amendment to the amendment proposed by the co-chair, Co-Chair Foster, to change the draw from the ERA to the general fund. I'll object, first of all. Representative Ballard.
Thank you. I was taken back a little bit, and I was hearing over and over and over that we need a tax in regards to getting a full PFD. And I was kind of surprised that it wasn't cut. That's not seems to be coming out of this body. And I think my colleague over here from Fairbanks, East Fairbanks, brought up a valid point that maybe we should have been bringing up the amendments to cut so that we can further go into the discussion of the PFD. Thank you, Chair.
Any other comments? Yes, Co-Chair Schragi.
Well, actually,
As to the amended amendment.
well, so have we amended the amendment? I don't believe we have. We
Oh,
have an
right.
objection to the conceptual amendment 1.
Sure, that's what I meant.
Very good. I support the conceptual amendment, switching it from ERA to general fund. I don't believe in overdrawing the earnings reserve. I believe very strongly in POMV. I believe it is one of the few spending caps that we have and that we were actually able to follow and consistently have done so. And so I support changing the fund source to
Not
general
a
fund.
spending cap,
from the
it's a
ERA.
revenue cap.
Okay. Representative Moore.
Thank you, Chair. I support this as well. Thank you, Co-Chair Foster. I think that was a really diligent move to move the funding source from the ERA, so we're not overdrawing it to the general fund. This is something I can get behind. I really appreciate it.
Okay. Representative Bynum, as to the amendment conceptually made to his own amendment. Go ahead.
Actually, Co-Chair, I will wait until we get back to the main motion to ask my question. Thank you.
Okay. I'm going to slowly, somewhat, remove my objection to the conceptual amendment. Are there other objections to the conceptual amendment? Seeing and hearing none, it's adopted. This amendment's been amended conceptually, and it now would pay this dividend through the general fund. I think that Rep. Bynum is in the queue.
Thank you, Co-Chair Josephson. If it would be possible, I see that this is a $2.47 billion line item expense, and I was wanting to know if we could get a quick update on what that would put the current budget with CS3 in surplus or deficit.
Got that number from Alexi.
Co-Chair, the answer is deficit, but Co-Chair Schragi.
Yeah, thank you, Co-Chair Josephson. I actually had the same question as Representative Bynum, and so I briefly spoke with the Legislative Finance Director in the back of the room. If you assume that there is no addition to the capital budget beyond what the governor proposed in his budget proposal, and you assume the operating budget introduced through House Committee Substitute 3, it would leave you with an approximately $1.5 billion deficit. The number again was $1.5 billion in deficit if this were to pass.
Okay. If there's no other comments, sorry, you want to close? Yes, my apologies. Co-Chair Foster wrapping up before the vote.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to mention that in terms of trying to close the gap, I mentioned earlier that it could be through some combination of lever pulling, but keep in mind that prior to the war, the overseas war, and prior to fuel prices spiking, we had an FY27 budget that was about balanced with $1,000 PFD. And then the war happened and oil prices went up based on the last revenue forecast for oil of $75 a barrel. That puts our budget at a surplus of about $450 million. And $450 million for every $100 of PFD it costs about $65 million. So that's about 700. If we put that entire surplus towards the PFD, that's about $700 that would be added on to last year's $1,000 PFD. So at a minimum, if we were putting that towards the PFD, then that would be a $1,700 PFD. And instead, what we're doing is we're putting it in other places and not doing anything for the PFD. And I think a lot of Alaskans are going to look at that and they're going to say, well, gosh, here we are, we're growing government, we're adding for all kinds of things, but we're not doing anything for the average everyday Alaskan. So I just wanted to make that point that, we do have another $450 million on top of, what we could pull from either the ERA or doing through the CBR or through other bills. So just want to make that point, and I am going to be voting in favor of my amendment number 12. Thank you.
Okay, that was the closing statement. Had you made?
So to be clear, this has already been worked out. The majority on the committee needs to have control of their budget. They already know who's going to vote yes and who's going to vote no for this budget. Okay, they've already got it worked out. Or for this amendment is what I mean. So this is a purely smoke and mirrors. People whose districts require them to vote yes for a full statutory dividend can now go back to their district and say, yes, I voted for a full statutory dividend. That's all that's happening right here. That's all. There's no attempt at a solution here. It's all just show. As Jimmy almost said, as Representative Jimmy almost said, she caught herself. It's all for show.
Made a comment yet on this underlying amendment?
Mr. Chair, Co-Chair Josephson, I don't have a comment. I have a motion.
All right. I'll go
Move
ahead.
it.
Thank you. Thank you for the indulgence, Co-Chair Josephson. I appreciate the maker of the amendment and the rationale that's been laid out. But at this time, I move to table amendment number 12
He doesn't want to vote on it.
at this time,
Object.
as amended.
Oh, that's right. It is, for the record, it is amended. The funding source is amended. We have an objection to the motion to table. Just give me one moment. Yeah, confirming some housekeeping things. So as to the motion to table, we're going to call the roll. Will the clerk call the roll on a motion to table amendment 12 as amended?
Representative Hannon.
No.
Representative Galvin.
No.
Representative Moore.
No.
Representative Bynum.
Yes.
Representative Tomaszewski.
No.
Representative Jimmy.
No.
Representative Allard.
No.
Representative Stapp.
Yes.
Representative Foster.
No.
Representative Schrage.
No.
Representative Josephson.
No.
2 yay, 9 nay.
By a vote of 2 to 9, the committee's voted not to table the amended amendment. That brings it before us. Is there further discussion?
Very brief it is. I need to confirm with the director.
Brief at ease at 2:28.
Okay. I'm going to fast forward. They're very brief at ease turned into a long at ease.
Co-Chairman Foster, to clarify the fund source.
Thank you, Co-Chair Josephson. Yes, so we've been asked to make sure that we've got this correct in terms of the fund source, and that it would be not double dipping, not taking an additional draw from the ERA. My intent is stick with the current POMV draw, which is 5%. That goes into the general fund. And then the amount necessary to cover the full PFD would go to the dividend fund, and the remainder stays in the general fund for government services. And I think I've got that correct, and I'm getting a nod, so that is correct.
Does that clarification, and that was my understanding of how he offered it.
That is exactly how the statute is set up and how it's supposed to work. The POMV draw can draw a certain sum from the earnings reserve account. The statutory formula says draw a portion of the earnings from the permanent fund, from the earnings reserve account, draw, and send it to the dividend fund for the corporation to pay dividends. That's how it's supposed to work. So they're attempting to follow the law and do what is necessary. Now, it creates a huge problem because you got more than $1 billion deficit. You got too much spending or not enough revenue, however you look at it. So in every other jurisdiction, in every other state, you would have a conversation about, do we reduce spending? Do we increase taxes? Okay. If we're going to increase taxes, now who do we want to tax? Who do we want to have pay taxes? Do you want to have industry, oil companies pay it? Do you want to have resource owners of the state pay it equally by taking their dividend? Do you want to increase taxes, income tax, sales tax, road tax, some other tax, create some tax? How are you going to do it? We're not having that debate. We're not having that conversation. All we're doing is going down the easy road that says, take the dividend. Continue to spend, take the dividend.
Does that provoke further comment? If not, we have an amended amendment, and I'd ask the clerk to call the roll.
Representative Bynum,
No.
Representative Jimmy,
No.
Representative Galvin,
Ouch.
No.
Representative Moore,
Yes.
Representative Allard,
Yeah. Yes.
Representative Tomaszewski,
Yes.
Representative Stapp,
No.
Representative Hannon,
No.
Representative Foster,
Yes.
Representative Schragi,
No.
Representative Josephson.
No.
4 yay, 7 nay.
By a vote of 4 to 7.
Okay, that failed. Let's go right now to, I'm going to attempt to get to House Finance right now because I believe they're going to be voting, if they haven't already, on a
Old permanent fund dividend. This is an option in front of you to have your voice heard, and that's why the amendment is being offered.
All right. With that, will the clerk call the roll as to Amendment 1 to Amendment 11?
Representative Allard,
Yes.
Representative
nay,
Galvin,
right now.
No.
Representative Jimmy,
No.
Representative Stapp,
Yes.
Representative Bynum,
Yes.
Representative Hannon,
No.
Representative Tomaszewski,
Yes.
Representative Moore. Yes. Representative Foster,
Yes.
Representative Schragi,
No.
Representative Josephson.
No.
6 yay, 5 nay.
By a vote of 6 to 5, Amendment 1 to Amendment 11 is adopted. And so now we have a new Amendment 11. Is there further discussion? I think further discussion would be similar in nature. Representative Galvin.
What's that?
I don't think I've said anything yet on
ahead.
this amendment,
go
so
ahead.
I do want to make a comment. I've already given us the whole lecture about how we need to come up with a good fiscal plan, and so I'm not going to get into that one again, but I will add one thing to this that scares me. The idea that we are, whether we get the votes or not, we're the body that's putting forth what is a responsible budget, I hope, to the floor to vote on. And for me, so many times I've heard from many of you, oh, gee, we can't afford to do that year after year after year. Well, something like the BSA, for example, that conversation came up quite a bit. And I respect where you're at because you wanted to hold the CBR at $3 billion. But in my mind, I thought, well, golly, we could actually do that for at least 30 years using the CBR. Not that I'd want to do that, but in my mind, I'm thinking to bridge us through until we have a lot more oil flowing where we're getting a higher rate of return and other possibilities for revenue that are perhaps being built and things like that. I saw, using that fund for responsible investments in our people and in our maintenance that has to happen. We have got a responsibility that is constitutional around our delivery of an education system. We need to make sure that we're growing the workers that our economy needs. We want our families to stay in Alaska. And I just don't think it sends a good message that we're going to give a one-time shot in the arm to people. Not that they don't need
Bring her
money
down
right
for
now.
just a
I
second
appreciate
here.
that they
Let you
do, and
know,
I want
I've just been
strategic
just
investments
confirmed
there.
with
I support that.
members in the legislature that
But
the Amendment
For
11
us
is
to
a
put in that we're okay
25-75
with a
split,
full statutory dividend
25%
when we know
dividend,
it's going to put
75
us
from
in the
government,
hole, whether the hole is the
and
CBR or
it has
somewhere
a
else.
full
It doesn't feel right to me.
PFD
I'm against this
option
amendment.
if you want to pay for it out of the CBR. So to require a
Representative.
3/4 vote.
Yeah, thank you, Co-Chair Justin. First thing I'll say, the $1,500 PFD that's out of the general fund in the budget currently, if some of the cuts had been adopted throughout this process, you would have the available revenue within the operating budget, even assuming higher capital budgets expenditures to pay for it. And the second thing is the contingency regarding the CBR just allows the full body of the House to make that decision. If people want to draw for the statutory PFD, they can do that at that time. If the current version of the budget with all the additions that the committee has made doesn't even allow for $1,000 PFD if you take the Senate's capital budget. And I just don't think that you can look at people who are going to be paying $7, $8 a gallon gas. Hopefully that drops, but this October, and we can tell them with a straight face that we decided to spend all their money on government programs when they can barely afford to heat their house. So this just gives the option to people in the full body of the legislature to take that vote if they want to do that. My position's pretty clear on how I'm going to vote on that, but I want to give people an option. So thanks.
I need an Eddie's for 2 minutes.
Eddie's at 7:49.
Okay, sorry about that, folks. I moved my slider on my fancy equipment here to reduce her voice, but leave the audio, video playing, and obviously it didn't work as I had intended. What I said, and I will clarify, is the amendment 11 is a 25-75 split of the permanent fund. The 5% market value draw. Okay, so it's a 25-75. 25 for the dividend, 75 for government. Okay, it has a language in it that would allow a full statutory dividend if the members of the legislature would vote to take the remainder to get to a full statutory limit dollar figure. If they want to take that out of the CBR, out of savings to pay for that dividend, then that will be in the budget. So I imagine that there'll probably be another spend request in the budget that also is tied to a CBR or gets paid out of the CBR, so that if you say yes to a dividend, you'll be saying yes to something else. So that's what they're going to vote on here. And this is live. I've just paused it. They'll be at ease for a couple minutes here, and then we'll see whether they come back with a 25-70. And if you ask me, pop this up here for just a second. If you ask me what the most likely outcome with a rewrite of the statutory formula would be right now with this legislature, if they were to do something, it would be a 25-75 split. So right now, it's a 50-50 split. The statutory formula says 50% goes to the dividend, 50% goes to state government. And in traditionally, all that 50% or most of that 50% had always gone to inflation proofing. Okay. That statute is still on the books that says it's a 50-50 split. With the POMV draw, which just gives you a dollar figure for how much you're going to draw from the earnings reserve account instead of the traditional formula that gave you a different number. Using that, 50% of that would go to dividends and 50 would go to the government. But we're just totally ignoring that statute. Okay. So if the statute was to get changed, I think it's highly likely that the legislature would agree to a 25-75 split with caveats, like if we can afford it or whatever. I mean, I think that it would be hard to force themselves to pay the 25% if if it meant that they had to cut something, right? But that's what I think would, and I say that because every year I was in the legislature, somebody came up with a 25-75 split. This is the thing that the legislature's kind of mulling on in the background is, well, if we do, you say follow the law or change the law. Okay, well, if we do change the law, what are we going to change it to? Well, it's probably going to be this 25-75 split at the most, right? All right, let's see if we can get a vote on this tonight. And they are still, so they cleared the room to go talk about it because not exactly sure how they're going to vote on it. It sets the minority up because remember, for the supplemental budget, the minority did not allow a CBR spend. So now the minority is going to say they're going to have a challenge on their hands. They say, yes, we're for a statutory dividend, but the majority is going to give them a statutory dividend if they spend it out of savings instead of spending it out of the general fund where it should be spent from. Okay. So again, you're avoiding the question about spending and taxation. Do we want to spend the amount we want to spend, or do we want to raise taxes to pay for it by going into savings? Okay. So whether you're using the savings that's in the earnings reserve account or whether you're using the savings in the CBR, it's same. Money's green. Same, right? You're avoiding the conversation. Do we need to cut spending or do we need to raise revenue? We just want to avoid that conversation at all because you get to a point where the electorate starts saying, no, we don't want taxes. This is if we peel the onion back even more, a lot of people in the population, they're going to say, don't cut spending, don't raise taxes. Don't cut my PFD. I've heard it. I want the PFD. I don't want you to cut spending. I don't want you to raise taxes. I've heard it. You just have to ignore people like that because they don't understand the problem. You one way or the other, this legislature, this year or next or the following one, is going to make a decision. Do you have a PFD and a tax, or do you have no PFD and a tax? That is what they're going to have to do. Because they're not going to reduce spending. I'm telling you. You can look at the consternation in the folks right now on this vote, and it would be even worse when they have to make a decision on reducing spending that actually means people lose jobs in state workers, or money is reduced that goes to some special interest in their district. They just the calculus they're saying is if I vote to reduce this spending, then I'm not going to have support for getting reelected. And therefore, I'm not going to do this. That's the calculus that's in the back of the mind is, oh man, I can think of the 10 people who are really going to be upset if I cut this spending, and they're not going to donate and they're going to find another candidate and I won't be able to come back. That's literally what's going through most people's minds. Let's see if we're back.
First of all,
we're back.
It will have the effect of giving the impression to the Alaska people that some people, that they're getting a massive dividend that costs something approaching $2.5 billion. It will absolutely have that impression.
In an election year, yes.
I'm not creating that impression, but it will be there in tomorrow morning's paper. It is, given our circumstances, a very liberal dividend. It is liberal spending. The more conservative position, in my opinion, was to vote no on this amendment as amended by a lot. We've heard a lot here about affordability and sustainability. This is completely unsustainable. Almost definitionally, it just can't be sustained. It will harm the next administration because we've heard you got to have $1 billion, sometimes $1.5 billion in the CBR, and that's what would be left. So the next administration's hands will be tied. And this, if it passes, could force the new revenue so many people in this chamber fear. And maybe that's good. And if folks feel like, well, this is a temptation, but it won't come to fruition, you should have seen 2022. You should have seen that. When a relatively conservative Senate sent us a $5,500 dividend that 11 of us, standing firm, rejected for a $3,200 dividend, which itself was not affordable. So I think the script has been flipped. I'm in my opinion, the conservative in this debate. And I guess I have nothing more to say.
The spending is unaffordable. You never hear that.
Thank you, Co-Chair Josephson. I support amendment number 11 as amended to pay Alaskans their full PFD. I made an impassioned speech yesterday explaining why Alaskans deserve their share of Alaska's resource wealth consistent with the PFD formula that currently exists in law. This is the people's money, and so I will be voting yes for this full statutory PFD. Thank you.
Co-Chair Schrage.
Yeah, thank you, Co-Chair Josephson. I have great respect for my co-chair, but I want the public to, again, be very clear, and I know this has already been covered, but 75% of this statutory dividend proposed in Amendment 11 now is based on a 3/4 vote threshold in both the House and the Senate. And to Rep. Josephson's point just a moment ago, maybe the votes will be there. I was there. And
Okay, folks, this is not a recording. This is live. This is
if we
live.
take that action,
House Finance tonight, going down right now, amendment number 11. They'll be voting soon on a 25-75 split with a full PFD if the legislature will spend that out of the CBR.
even if the CBR vote fails and we have a $1,500 dividend, that would put our budget, without any adds to the capital budget beyond what the governor has proposed, in deficit territory of more than $100 million. Where are we going to make that up? That is $100 million in cuts to the budget, or an almost elimination of the very skimpy capital budget put forward by the governor back in December. It's not achievable.
My final year, I found $300 million in unfunded, unfilled vacancies.
At some point in this process, there will be a dividend, and I am sure that it'll be north of 1,000. But I do not believe it will be 1,500 because it does not work within the goalposts that we have. It does not work within our the bands of revenue that we can expect this next year. It was alluded to earlier that we couldn't even afford $1,000 dividend with this budget. That's not true. That is assuming a $450 million capital budget. On that too, we're going to find some compromise throughout the process. It's not going to be the governor's 167 or lower, and it's not going to be the 450 that's in the Senate. There's going to be a balancing that takes place through this process. But if you put 1,500 in here, it will eliminate any opportunity for balance. It will force us to decimate the budget or to decimate the capital budget. And it's very problematic. I'm not in support of paying out an amount that would force us into a deficit territory and to put us out of balance. We talk all the time about passing balanced budgets and not sending something to the Senate.
We're literally saying we don't want to hurt the government sector. We're willing to hurt the private sector. We're not willing to hurt the government sector.
Any other comments? With that, Representative Tomaszewski and Rappin.
Thank you, Co-Chair. Well, thank you for this very spirited debate. I think the PFD is an important part of this budget. And as of right now, there is no PFD in this budget. The people of Alaska are hurting right now. We have high gas prices. We have disasters. We have cold, extreme weather. We have difficult circumstances. We have high energy cost. And if there is, this is the best time to give a full and statutory PFD. It can be done. We've heard about economic headwinds. There's a lot out there. The people are feeling it. This amendment follows statute. It follows the law. And I ran on that premise. I ran on the premise of following the law. And I'm going to vote for that. I believe the people of the state of Alaska know how to spend their money better than we do. And this is the most fair way to get those dollars out to all Alaskans who are eligible for the PFD. This is the best way. This is a boom for economic growth for the private sector. There is no reason that we can't make this decision right here, right now. And you know what? There's another vote ahead. The full body is going to have their chance to vote on this also. And I think that's important. And so I hope you can end the debate on whether we have a permanent fund in this budget or not, because I believe we should. I believe we can do it right now. And I asked for your humble support. Thank you.
With that, will the clerk call the roll on the amended Amendment 11?
Representative Stapp,
Yes.
Representative Allard,
Yes.
Representative Moore,
Yes.
Representative Hannon,
No.
Representative Jimmy,
No.
Representative Tomaszewski,
Yes.
Representative Galvin,
No.
Representative Bynum,
Yes.
Representative Schragi,
No.
Representative Foster,
Yes.
Got it.
Representative Josephson.
No.
6 yay, 5 nay.
By a vote of 6 to 5, the committee has adopted amended Amendment 11. So that, without any immediate call to resume previous amendments, brings us back to where we were some time ago.
Co-Chair Josephson,
Yes.
since we're on the topic of talking about revenues in the permanent.
I wish I had amendment number 3 to tell you what it was. I don't have it to me right now.
Give me a moment, please.
Yes. Bynum voted for it. Stapp voted for it. Allard voted for it. Foster voted for it. Tomaszewski voted for it.
All right, Amendment 3, Representative Bynum.
Thank you, Co-Chair Josephson. Amendment number 3, I'll give you the short rundown on what it does. This amendment creates a waterfall provision for a 50-50 appropriation not to exceed $50 million in total. We'll effectively call it an energy relief payment and a payment to the statutory budget reserve for UGF revenues exceeding a base of $6.705 billion. Beyond that, any additional revenues will be appropriated into the CBR.
Discussion. Representative Hannon.
Co-Chair Josephson, my question is to the maker because I believe he said 50 million. The explanation on the first page of the amendment says 500 million, so I'd like that clarified.
Representative Bynum.
Thank you, Co-Chair Josephson. Correction, yes, that was not to exceed 500 million in total.
Okay. Let me roll this down here. If I understand
Representative Galvin.
correctly.
Thank you.
What they're talking about is if we have a windfall of revenue coming in because of the oil prices, then the waterfall is going to take effect and it's going to direct that to certain places.
As it stands, given the current context of amendment number 11.
Representative Bynum.
Thank you. If you turn to the second page of the amendment, this is actually the drafted legal language in the amendment. Ultimately, what this is doing is that if you look on page 1, line 4, it's talking about an amount that exceeds the 6.705 billion. And basically, when we receive revenue beyond that point, so if oil is going to be high, and it's going to be high for the period of time in the fiscal year, what will ultimately happen at the end of the fiscal year, we will take all of those revenues that are in excess of that and we will split them in half. Half will go to savings and the other half will be paid out in energy relief payment to Alaskans.
Okay, that was pretty clear. So if the oil prices stay high after July, okay, so the start of the new fiscal year, they're in fiscal year 27 budget. So after July 1st, if the prices stay high all the way from there to June 30th of 2027, then 50% of that above the projected revenue, 6.5 billion or whatever it is, 50% of it would go to a relief payment and 50% of it would go into savings.
27 budget
Follow-up.
Follow-up, Rep. Galvin.
And did you happen to do any modeling on that? I'm curious to know.
No.
So if there was, let's say, an extra 50 million, did you do any modeling to know what that would do?
I'm sorry. I'm laughing. Anything that's above what you projected to earn in taxes.
Yes, before we do that, I'd like
50% of it would go out to the public. That would help them. And 50% would go into savings. And that would help you. Okay, they're going to take it at ease. I love doing this live because I'm like on the edge of my seat here, see what's going to happen. But I can't pause it and rewind it when somebody says something and I need to catch what they said. Anyway, and I can't fast forward it now. I'm just stuck listening to the music. Okay. So let me turn this music down because I don't want to listen to that. Okay. Let me reiterate, make this clear. Okay. They're dealing with amendment number 3. They already passed amendment number 11. So amendment number 11 says we're going to pay a $1,500 PFD. It's a 25-75 split. And there's language that will pay a full statutory dividend, so $3,800, if you take the difference from the CBR. That passed, so that's in the budget. So now that'll go to the, well, assuming this gets out of House Finance and goes to the floor, then the rest of the members will decide whether they want to do it that way. So if the floor says yes to the budget, but no to the CBR, then it's going to be a $1,500 PFD. If they say yes to the budget and yes to the CBR, then it'll be a $3,800 PFD. Now they're talking about a completely different amendment that says, hey, if we have more revenue than what we think we're going to have, what we're projecting, remember, price of oil is at $115 right now or something like that.
House Finance.
They're projecting it's going to be at 75, an average of 75 for the rest of the fiscal year. Okay. So if it ends up coming in an average above 75, so let's say it's an average of 80 or 90, whatever's above what we projected we're going to have, then that above amount will be split in half Half of it will
each
go to the
dollar,
people in an
roughly,
energy
has to
rebate
be- so
check,
there
and the other
are
half will go into
674,000
savings. That's what's going to be debated right now.
Alaskans who are eligible to receive
As soon as I turn the
permanent fund
volume up.
dividend in FY 2027. So a $50 million windfall would result in
This is
roughly
staff,
$74
Representative
energy relief payment to each individual Alaskan. And so then on up through the scale up to that full amount of the $250 million, you're looking at a roughly 350, give or take, dollar per person energy relief payment if the full revenues apply under this, the windfall revenues apply under this amendment.
Follow up?
Yes, follow.
So I just want to make sure I'm tracking this. If it's a $50 million over and above, then it's half of that. So if it's 250, let's say, I think is what you were
Correct.
just saying, you actually mean that there would be a $500 million surplus, and then you split that in half goes in the CBR. Is that right? I want to make sure I'm tracking this right.
So
Your name again is what?
Oh, thank you, Chair Josephson. Through the for the record, Trevor Shaw, staff to Representative Bynum. The way I had heard the question is if we had $50 million that applied to the energy relief, but yes, so anything that exceeds the $6.705 billion up to that 7.205 amount, half of that would go to the SBR for setting aside for savings, and the other half would go to the energy relief payments.
Follow up?
Follow up.
I thought I understood the maker of the amendment to say that it's going to go into the CBR, and I just want to make sure that's right.
Through the
Yes.
chair to Rep Galvin, that 500 million that gets split 50-50 over the 6.705, half goes to energy relief, the other half goes to the SBR.
Not
This-
the CBR.
And then anything above that 7.205 billion amount, then waterfalls into the constitutional budget reserve.
Okay.
So.
Okay, and then,
yes,
sorry,
go
one
ahead.
last follow-up. And so when does that happen? The excess revenues would be given in a check, presumably, or auto-delivered. Would it happen this year or the following year or the following year? How does that work?
Through the chair to Representative Galvin, this would be an energy relief payment that would be paid concurrently with the FY28 permanent fund dividend. So this would take excess fiscal year 27 funds and set them aside for an energy relief payment the following year.
So Representative Bynum, in the previous amendment, Amendment 11 that you amended, your position was to spend $2.5 billion total, potentially, or ask the bodies to consider spending $2.5 billion. And now you want to make a decision about revenue that will materialize as late as June of next year, and you want to spend some of that on yet another dividend. That's how I read this, a different dividend.
Call it a tax
So
rebate.
this is your second expenditure on dividends.
Except it's not a
this
tax
evening?
rebate.
Is that right?
So
I'm just,
So, Co-Chair Josephson, if you're asking for a response on what this does, this says that if we have excess monies beyond what we have in our forecast, that what do we do with those? And so right now, what we do with those is those go to the general fund. And what I am saying with this amendment is that Alaskans will be receiving some level of a relief at some point for those high costs. We are experiencing, as you are aware, high cost for everything across the board. I just got a notice from AML that said that my rates for shipping are 18.5% above. This is going to go across the board for everything that Alaskans pay for, from shipping of goods to transportation. We will see it on our airline tickets. We will see it on our ferry tickets. We will see it on the groceries in the grocery store. So what I am saying is when oil is above what we have projected in our spring forecast, that we take half of that and we set it aside into savings. And the other half of it, we give it to Alaskans to help offset that cost. And then anything above the $500 million is set into our other savings account, which is the CBR. That is what this amendment does. And that's what I'm suggesting that we would do.
Representative Galvin.
Thank you. I just want to say I can't find anywhere in the amendment itself on page 1 or 2 where it says that the payout would be on 2028. And I think that is important that we all understand that. And I also wanted to add my comment that I just don't understand how we balance this with the fact that we have a major lawsuit against all of us, the state of Alaska, because we are not funding public education. I just don't see that. And I think it's important that we think about that, because especially if we're thinking about, I know that people don't support, that are supporting this amendment really want to see.
That's a lie. The state of Alaska is funding education. They're funding it exactly how the formula that the left and the education lobby created. The legislature is funding it exactly how the formula says it's supposed to be funded.
But in our public safety, in so many different areas where, you know, that are valuable to us. So I'm not going to support this amendment, and I'm going to leave it at that.
This amendment's not going to pass.
All sorts of hands. So I'm going to go to co-chair Schrage. I think I saw Hannon.
So I want to be clear here. This amendment is taking tax revenue and it's turning it into a rebate check to people who did not pay that tax. If we had an income tax or a sales tax or some other tax where the people of Alaska were paying it and we collected more than what we actually needed, and then you paid that back to the people in a form of a rebate, then that would be a tax rebate. Okay. This is taxes collected from oil companies and redistributes that tax to people. So it's taking money out of the general fund. It's taking money out of the state coffers and giving it to the people. It's not a program set up like the earnings of the permanent fund where you have investment activity happening. You have investment and earnings off those investments that then gets passed out to the owners of that investment. That's what the dividend is. Okay. These are, you can say that, oh, it's government checks. It's government checks. There are two different sources of revenue. One of them is tax revenue. One of them is investment earnings from an ownership state. I'm not in favor of this. I'm not in favor of this kind of bunky business.
And I mean, no insult seems absurd. And I'm going to be opposed to this amendment. Thank you.
Representative Hannon is next. Representative Hannon.
Thank you, Co-Chair Josephson. And I guess I want to raise a question I raised earlier on a different amendment, but it appears to me the way this is crafted, it would attempt to bind the next legislature as to revenues collected during that fiscal year of the 35th legislature about how they would spend it. So if they had revenue in excess of $6.7 billion, and let's say they wanted to spend $1 billion on capital projects, they could not if this language. But as I understood earlier, I am confused how this could be crafted to bind the 35th legislature to spend the money that is earned during that upcoming fiscal year spending authority. I don't know now if in the 35th legislature they would like to spend revenue beyond $6.57 billion on capital or operating or massive fire or new ferry builds. But I am unclear as to the legality of how to bind the future legislature.
The amendment is dealing with revenue that is generated between July 1st of this year and June 30th of next year. That's next fiscal year. Okay. So revenue that comes in after June 30th of the following year is the next fiscal budget. So any revenue that comes in during this next year, July 1 to June 30th, is the current budget year. So anything that's above what you're expecting to receive in the current budget year that you're dealing with with this budget, you're saying it's a windfall. So we're going to put it in savings, and some of it we're going to pay out to people. If you want to spend that money later in the next legislature, it's sitting in savings.
Follow-up would actually be for the maker. And I want to just get on record that if we have excess revenue in excess of $6.7 billion, your preference is not to spend it on capital projects or refunding in the CBR, but to put into energy dividends in Alaskans' individual hands.
Representative Bynum, just
Yeah,
as to that question, so I can move through the queue.
Well,
You've been queried about some.
I absolutely will. Thank you for that, Co-Chair Josephson. I feel like, there's been some indication here that providing option to this legislature in the previous amendment is an improper thing to do. If you don't want to vote on a CBR, you vote no. Now, I'm in no way suggesting in any way how people should vote on such an activity. I'm just providing that option. Now, what we're talking about here is additional revenue that's beyond what we put into this budget. Our current budget right now is basically being established, and we're saying we're going to spend $6.7 billion of UGF. The bigger question is what do we do with additional revenues? We have already seen the high cost that is impacting our communities. And now, if you're asking me, should we be investing in capital? Absolutely, we should be investing in capital.
That's part of the
But the way that this legislature, since I've been here, has prioritized their spending, they don't prioritize capital at all. It's ignored. The operating budget comes first. It always has. We sat here at this table last year talking about long-term capital maintenance issues, talking about deferred maintenance, and yet we spent what, Co-Chair? We spent less than $300 million, UGF dollars, on our capital. Yet we want to sit here and say that we're going to prioritize capital. Half of the funds on overages in this budget or in this amendment are being set aside, and we can spend those and should spend those on capital.
Okay.
So I guess that to answer the question, is it absurd that when we have money beyond what we have projected in our revenues, that we actually set some of those aside and then we give some relief to Alaskans that are experiencing high cost? Is that absurd? I don't think so. I'm not happy with where we're at in this budgeting process. I'm not happy with where we're at with the PFD and the arguments and the conversations that happen in the public. I'm not happy at all. Constantly under attack out there in the public. I want this body to start doing the responsible thing with the money we have available. When I look at the way we went through this budget process, we start talking about where we prioritize dollars. We haven't been able to do that. So do I want capital? Absolutely, I want capital.
Okay.
Representative Hannon would spend that money on government services and hand it out to people who are dependent on government. Instead of handing out an energy rebates, she would put it towards something else that's government spending, right? So it's going to get spent either way, whether you're handing it out in an energy rebate to people to spend how they want to spend it, or whether you're going to give it to government and dole it out on how the government wants to dole it out. Either way, you're going to spend it.
To anticipate in the event that we do have excess revenue, to have a plan, right? A plan to set some aside, a plan to help every Alaskan, and a plan to possibly add to our capital budget. So thank you, Representative. I will be supporting your amendment.
I have a comment. 1 second.
Okay, Representative Galvin.
Thanks. I just wanted to comment that to me, my votes say more than anything else. And I hope that the state of Alaska looks at my voting record and I'm voting my values.
I want to thank Representative Gray, Carrick, and Mina for joining us. 3 friends of mine, by the way. Not that you all aren't, but they decidedly are.
There's another argument here. If you can get a portion of your excess revenue out to the people instead of getting it in government hands, then you're reducing the spending and the damage government can do. I get that argument too.
We are funding education, might not be to the dollar amount some of us want, but we are funding education. I just want to remind the body when we say things that we need to be factual and honest about it.
Thank you. So, Co-Chair Foster.
Thank you, Co-Chair Josephson. My folks, they're just trying to survive. You go to all these villages. I represent 27 villages between my district as well as Representative Jimmy's district. We have by far the poorest per capita districts in the state. And, I've got folks, many folks, they have to buy 5 gallons of heating oil at a time because they just don't have enough to buy, to fill their tank. And so every few days, they'll go and they'll use up all the money they have just to buy 5 gallons of heating oil. A lot of folks in our villages, they have to haul water from the washateria to their homes. Folks are just trying to put food on the table. And I just came from Bethel just recently.
There's a lot of people that are forcing them to live there too, right?
And it was such a reminder to me when I see folks there who, have so very, very, very little. And I was happy to see their spirits uplifted at this gathering. But it was just a reminder to me that folks have so little out in the villages. And I really wish that, we could really target more of these programs to the folks who really need them. But when these opportunities come up to vote for these big things like the PFD or this energy relief, when these come up, I have to take them because those are the best opportunities that I have. So with that, I also just wanted to say that I wanted to emphasize what Representative Bynum is saying, and that is that this isn't taking away from education. Our budget right now, as it stands, is built around a $75 barrel of oil, which is what was forecasted by the Department of Revenue. And our budget built in a $630 addition to the BSA for school funding. That's in addition to the $700 we did last year. And that doesn't go away. What this says is if there is excess above the $75 per barrel, then we're going to share that wealth with Alaskans. And for me and for my district, that means that money is going to the people who really, really, really do need it. So with that, I will be supporting amendment number 3.
Representative Bynum, wrap up.
Thank you, Co-Chair Josephson. I appreciate everybody's thoughtful debate. That's what we're here to do. And hope you'll support the amendment. Thank you.
Will the clerk call the roll on amendment 3?
Representative Galvin.
No.
Representative Tomaszewski.
Yes.
Representative Allard.
Yes.
Representative Hannon.
No.
Representative Stapp.
Yes.
Representative Moore.
Yes.
Representative Bynum.
Yes.
Okay.
Representative Jimmy.
Yes.
Got it.
Representative Schrage.
No.
Representative Foster.
Yes.
Representative Josephson.
No.
7 yay, 4 nay.
By a vote of 7 to 4, the committee adopts amendment 3. My intent now
Exciting, huh?
is to once again return
We have to
from
go
whence
back
I
to the other.
came.
They went back to amendment 3. Why didn't Rick is asking on Facebook is asking why didn't she call her out by name? So when you are
I believe
operating under uniform rules and under Mason's rules for etiquette and how you operate meetings, you are to avoid direct calling somebody out directly by name or by individual, by making it very clear that that's the person who you're speaking to direct, because it inflames passions. Okay. She's borderline in what she said. Okay. The purpose here is because you have to keep an orderly meeting. And if everybody started finger pointing at each other, it just blows up. It just blows up. You can't get anything done. So that's why you have uniform rules and you have Mason's rules, Robert's rules of order, that you're not supposed to make things personal, directly direct something at somebody, because we're all human, and making your point is not the overall purpose of the meeting. It's to get done with the business of the meeting. And if you make it harder for that to happen, then everybody suffers. And so that's why it has to be that way.
Why this fund source was used. I also did confirm that although it is a lawful use of those funds, although that is a concern that we usually are directing timber receipts to support the forest industry, that it is a lawful use of the funds. I wanted to highlight
Okay.
the fact that I would like to see our industry in forestry be advanced, and that we should be making investments in.
Let me pause that so it's not going on in my ear. All right. So what we've heard tonight is that the House Finance Committee has passed an amendment to the budget bill that adds a $1,500 dividend into the budget. It adds language that increases that dividend from a $1,500 to a $3,800 dividend. So that's a 25-75 split is currently a $1,500 dividend, and a full statutory dividend would be $3,800. But in order to get the $3,800 dividend, the full body is going to have to agree to take the difference between $1,500 and $3,800 out of this constitutional budget reserve, out of that savings account. So instead of spending it out of permanent fund earnings, you would be spending the difference out of savings. Okay. So that's how you would get a full statutory dividend. What we also heard is they just passed an amendment that looks towards fiscal year 27, which starts July 1st of this year. Any revenue that comes in above what we're projecting at $75 a barrel of oil, any revenue that comes in above that is split up to $500 million, is split 50-50. Half of it goes to a rebate check that would be energy rebate that would be paid to somebody at the end of the fiscal year. So that's not until next year's dividend payment. And then the other half would go into savings, a portion of it going into the SBR, and then another portion going into the CBR if it's large enough. So that amendment also passed the House Finance. Now, you can say, okay, well, it's passed and it's done, but that's not necessarily accurate. I don't know whether they're going to get done with the budget tonight or not. If they don't get done with the budget and take a vote on the entire bill, then they come back at another meeting. They can also always go back and rescind their votes on both of these amendments. So until the bill actually leaves the committee, it's not a done deal. Okay. That gives people a time to have buyer's remorse, or come back and somebody makes a good argument and they come back and change what they did. So that's part of the rules. So we'll see whether they get done with the budget today. It looks like they're on amendment 91. So how many ever they've got, I don't know. Usually they got a whole binder or a whole big thick stack of them. And just because they're there doesn't mean they get offered. Somebody wrote them and then decided they didn't want to offer them. So anyway, if they pass the budget tonight, then it goes to the floor with both of those provisions in it. If it doesn't pass tonight, then it'll pass another night, and hopefully those provisions are still there, and then they get to debate. Oh, and I should say that on the floor, they will have an opportunity to amend those provisions again on the floor. It's rarer that things get amended on the floor because you don't have this back and forth debate like you have here in committee, but it's possible. Okay. This is a House bill. So that means the budget goes from the House to the Senate, and the Senate gets to do the exact same thing all over again. The budget goes to Senate Finance. They go through it. They can offer a CS, a committee substitute, and just redo everything if they want to in one fell swoop, or they can go through the amendment process. They can amend and change anything that just happened today. And then it goes to the Senate floor for a up or down vote. And then if there are differences, which there always are, then it goes to a conference committee. If the other body doesn't agree to the changes, then it goes to a conference committee and they just figure out which numbers to use, do a compromise. Okay, so that's big picture what's going on. This, just because it's happened today doesn't mean that it stays there, is what I'm saying. All of that to say that. So I just heard from my representative here, Bill Elam. Last night we had 110 plus conceptual amendments. So yeah, there's a good number of amendments out there. So I don't know. My final thoughts tonight on this amendment that passed regarding the energy payment. I get the intent here to have kind of a spending limit. If you take the money away from the government, they can't spend it. And if you get it into the hands of people, then they can spend it in the private economy, and that benefits the private economy. I get that piece of it. I'm also concerned that we're making a habit out of taking tax revenue from other taxpayers, not ourselves, because we're not the taxpayer. The oil industry is the taxpayer. If it's coming in, revenue's coming in above $75 a barrel of oil, that's oil tax money. Okay. And we're taking that oil tax money and we're turning around and giving it to ourselves. Okay. So tax the oil companies for a paycheck for me. I'm concerned with that. That is different in my mind. It is different structurally. It is different fiscally. It is different than I and you, all of us, and the legislature setting up an investment fund, and that money gets invested in private sector economic activity that generates a return, and that return comes back to me, and now I get to decide what to do with that return. It's not tax. It's not a tax money. Nobody got taxed. Somebody benefited from me setting aside my money instead of spending it on government or on something else. I gave it to you, and you did something good with it, and you gave me interest. You gave me money back plus, right? So now I get to take that and I can spend it on government, or I can give myself a dividend because I just did something good with my money. Okay. That's the dividend, the permanent fund dividend structure. Completely different than taking tax dollars from the oil companies or from any other tax and then redistributing it to people. Okay. That in my mind is no bueno. Like I would rather just see a tax rebate back to the taxpayer and be done with it. Or put it in savings and save it for a rainy day. That's what I would do. Craig's asking a question. Is the legislation a cheaper alternative than giving a full statutory dividend? Is the legislation cheaper? Craig, are you asking about the dividend language that they just adopted? Because it is cheaper. It costs the state less to do a $1,500 dividend out of general funds than it does a $3,800 dividend out of general funds. So yes, that's cheaper, if that's what you're asking. The full statutory dividend that is in the budget now, the difference would have to come out of savings, and then the total would be the same as if you paid it out of general fund, but it's just two different sources of money, general fund or savings. And they just use a combination to get to the full dividend. This makes my head hurt, huh? We got to get good at parsing through the details here. This is what oversight's all about. I know. I'm not just because I'm a geek and I can get into this and I enjoy it. Not everybody's like that. I understand that. But here's the problem. If we avoid these things, who is going to provide oversight on what's happening? You can sit down and watch, but if you don't understand what's happening because you don't have the experience, then are you really providing oversight? Like, you got to make sense of it. You got to understand what's happening, and then you got to provide feedback. So I go to my representative and say, hey, this is the way I want you to vote on this particular bill. I want you to support this. I don't want you to support this over here and I've got facts and figures and I understand the issue, right? That's what oversight is. I get it. It's been a long day, and this does make a head hurt. Imagine sitting there in committee all day and having to go budget after amendment after amendment after amendment, trying to figure out what the right thing to do is. Yeah, it's a challenge. Let's see. The energy rebate is about $400. Craig, they wouldn't know exact. That would just be a projection. If there is a projection, a number right now, because it's based on what extra money we would receive from taxes that haven't been collected yet. So it's based on the price of oil for barrels of oil that haven't been produced yet and sold yet. So we don't know what the size of that would be. It's all based on what ends up being the price of oil for fiscal year 27 above $75 a barrel. Let me see here. Care to explain? So we are okay with that, but just not following the process already in law. Care to explain that one? I've really got to catch these questions when they're asked at the time of the conversation. Deshana, I'm struggling to. Are you talking about the energy rebate amendment and comparing that to a statutory dividend process that we're not following? Is that what you're comparing here? And the answer is yes. What you've witnessed tonight is the power of the purse. Constitutionally, that's the power of the purse on display. We send representatives to the legislature and they get to decide the finances of the state every year, regardless of what the previous legislature did. They can follow it. They can undo it. They can turn and go 90 degrees. They can turn and go on 180 degrees. That's the power of the purse. No other entity gets to control this. The governor gets to weigh in. He can veto, and then the legislature can override, right? So the legislature has got the power of the purse. This is the sausage making. This is why the legislature exists. I know there's other things that we think that the legislature is going to do or should do, can pass all sorts of laws. The only requirement that the legislature has is to pass a budget. Constitutionally, what you must do is pass a budget. So that's what you do. You have to figure these things out. Let's see here. Craig says a state on YouTube says a state would spend less, plus it would be way more entertaining. Yeah. If we were actually having budget cut conversations, it would be way entertaining. Yeah, it would. It would be way entertaining. Lots of Band-Aids for the bleeding hearts. Okay, good question. As a face saving measure for some, as this plays out, do you think an energy rebate will be proposed if the PFD payout is lower once this all goes through the mix? It is possible that the PFD ends up being similar to what it was in previous years, where you pay a $1,000 PFD, the Senate changes it to $1,000 PFD, and then pays a energy rebate. That happened before. It's within the possibility of happening now. It's hard to say which direction the Senate would go on that. Now I understand where you're getting your math, Craig. Yes. So making an assumption of dollar figures, then you get a $400 rebate. Sorry, just catching up here. Rick, I don't know that it's a bribe. I'd have to stop and think about that for a second. I don't think so. I think that Representative Bynum is just looking at the future and saying, if we don't do something, if we don't address the issue and there is excess revenue, it's going to sit in the general fund and the government will just spend it It'll just be there to spend. Okay. Representative Hannon, what she was alluding to is that if there is excess money that comes in and it just sits in the general fund at the end of the fiscal year, when there's I was going to say when the next budget comes in, but when there's a supplemental request that comes in next January for this current year, and there's excess money in the general fund, the tendency of the legislature is going to say, hey, well, we have a supplemental budget and we have extra money. So let's just apply it to the supplemental budget. And more so is everybody in government knows that the price of oil has gone up. And everybody knows that there's excess money sitting in the general fund. Guarantee it. Guarantee it. They know. The managers know when there's extra money sitting in the general fund. Supplemental requests come rolling in. So now we have budget 2 for fiscal year 27, and it'll drop sometime between January and March of next year. And all that excess money that's sitting there, why not spend it? We've got these needs. There all sorts of needs. Yeah, we'll spend it next year. Representative Bynum was 100% correct, and his kind of butting heads with Representative Hannon is 100% the truth of what's happening. The operating budget growth in people's state workers and municipal workers' paychecks, right? That is taking over. It is higher priority than infrastructure spending, capital budget spending. Okay? It is every single year. We're growing the number of employees in the state, and we have not addressed the capital needs of the state. The operating budget is outcompeting the private sector and the capital spending that needs infrastructure help. That's what's happening. So, if you can't win the argument about moving spending from the operating budget to the capital budget, the next best thing is to try to figure out how to get money out of the government's hands so it can't spend more and grow more in the operating budget. My opinion. So, with regard to this energy rebate, I can see it both ways. I can see where if the if the alternative is spending it on the operating budget, then yeah, let's get it out in an energy rebate. Philosophically, I don't think this is a wise thing to do, but I recognize what's going to happen. And so it's a altruistic or philosophical question versus Jeremy Bynum, Representative Bynum's practical solution that says, we know what's going to happen. We know that the supplemental budget next year is going to spend any of that excess money. So let's think ahead, put in place a structure that says that money's gone. It got sent out to an energy rebate. It's already earmarked for energy rebate. Probably not an unwise thing in the bigger scheme of things. I mean, some of that depends on what happens with the next legislature, right? And I would argue too, any one of those supplemental budgets next year would be able to undo that portion of that budget. You want to take away and do away with the claw back that money that was for a energy rebate at a supplemental budget? You could do that. You could do that. I think Lynn and I are the only ones that are probably having fun at this. Gluttons for punishment here. Okay, let me go back down here and see where we're at. I'm thinking it's probably time to call in an evening. The governor can, let me see here. Craig, you see the governor can also pay an energy rebate with surplus. Not if it's not appropriated by the legislature. Not if it's not appropriated. They'd have to add it to a budget. It'd have to be in a supplemental budget or something. The governor can't just take money out of the general fund and spend it without an appropriation. Yeah, there was an energy rebate, but the legislature went along with it. They had to appropriate it. The governor can't just say, here's an energy rebate. Rick's got an answer. Take the excess and buy stock in SpaceX or put it on my railroad spur. Yeah. Well, I mean, investing it in something that Elon Musk is doing is not a bad idea. I've seen some recent announcements that he's made, and I'm like, this is the guy that's what's really funny to me is watching him watching Elon talk about what's going on with the merger of XAI, Tesla, and SpaceX. Okay, just think about this for a second. And he's talking about data centers in space. Okay, he's talking about installations on the moon for launching satellites and launching things, right? And here's Zuckerberg making his announcement about new glasses for Facebook. Like, these guys, like Elon Musk is thinking on a level so much further higher than anybody else on the globe, I think, right now. It's amazing to see what's happening there. Anyway, I don't know what made me think of that. A little bit of Elon Musk thinking in the state of Alaska would be great. I would love to see that. Anyway, just not if you're thinking about it in the terms of government. How do we create more government programs? Elon brought Doge to the federal government. We could use our own Doge here, couldn't we? Okay. Appreciate you guys participating tonight. Thanks. I think we're at an all-time record here of participants. And I know that I had a couple legislators in the room here, so that's good. Thanks for joining us. We're going to call it an evening, and we'll be back. I got to turn this. There you go. We'll be back tomorrow night, and we'll figure something to talk about. Maybe we'll do an update on what happened with the final budget bill, if I can figure out what actually happened. Assuming that they pass it tonight. Otherwise, we'll be sitting. There's no need for this show to sit through all of the amendments that they do. We need to be very specific and target the pertinent amendments that we want to hear about, because there's a lot of BS. All right. Very good to talk with you all tonight. We'll see you tomorrow night. Have a good night.